Just summarizing from last session. Okay. So what is big data? It's a data problem which is created by volume velocity variety where traditional systems cannot handle. And to solve that problem, what we do? We use distributed technology, and these technologies are known as big data technology. So definition is only from these two perspectives. Any problem, any data problem which is causing this problem. So because of the data increasing in size or the variety of the data is coming differently or the velocity, so that problem is a big data problem. So if you are still not clear, please refer to the video. We have covered it in very detail there. Now the second thing which is we covered is what's the difference between business intelligence and big data. So to summarize that, so BI tools are only able to give answer to what happened. So why the sales went up 30%, new accounts opened by 50%. Okay, so these are the examples which BI KPIs can give. So KPIs can give, okay, my customer attrition percentage is 5% in the last year. This year time it is 3%. So it has come down. So those are what BI tools KPIs are going to tell you, which essentially means BI tools is explaining what happened. Okay, so BI tools are explaining what happened. So what we really want to know is why it happened, why did the sales go down, and what will happen in future. So we are into the world of, we want to predict. So where the predictive analytics and so on comes in. We also want to get a deeper understanding of the data. So this is where you try to take all the structured, unstructured data and so on. So let me give you an example here. So with BI, let's say the sales forecasting was saying that yeah, sales went down, and you were not able to understand why it happened. So for that, to understand why it happened, you need to understand what are all the customer touch points. Correct? So you need to understand all the customer touch points. So let's look at all the customer touch points. So one of the customer touch points will be the online interaction on the website. Online interaction with website. What information can we get from there? We can get the web logs, the behavior of which item the person has clicked on the site, which is the page he navigated, which is the place he spend the most time browsing over our site, and so on. So these are information which is available in the web logs. It is pretty unstructured or semi-structured form, the web log file. Okay, depending upon what kind of web logs we are looking at. So this is one interaction. The other interaction is customer service interaction. You might be interacting with customer service through emails. You might be interacting with phone calls and so on. So with these phone calls and emails, now we will be able to understand whether he was happy or not. What is his problems and so on. So if you generalize these problems, you will be able to find out why there is an increase in sales or why there is a decrease in sales. Similarly, based on his online behavioral pattern, you can find it out. Similarly, there are many other channels, customer channels, which are there, each of which will give large amount of data, either in structured, unstructured, all sort of form. So unless you bring all this together and analyze, you will not able to understand why it happened. And traditional BI systems doesn't do it because they don't have the capability to process unstructured data. So what big data is going to bring in is since it's going to solve the variety problem of the data, it is going to help you understand and analyze this large volume of data which is there in the web logs, emails, phone call records and so on. And this is going to enable. So this is just one example. So big data doesn't mean that you need to have all this unstructured data. Even with structured data, you can have a big data problem if the volume is growing too fast, or the velocity of the data at which the structured data is coming is too fast. So this is the reason between what we are talking about with traditional BI and big data solutions. So we call it as big data analytics. Any questions still here? What is big data? What is? Because we have already done it. I am just trying to summarize it so that it will be easier for all of you guys. So now let me go back to the discussion of today. And the discussion of today is the fundamentals of big data. There is schema on write, data local processing and so on. So let's introduce some of these fundamentals. Any questions still here? Please let me know now. Okay, so no questions. I am going to introduce to the fundamentals. Again, sorry for the folks who has attended this first time today. There was a small introductory session which we have done. So in case we want to repeat that, we will repeat that at a later point of time. But the videos are already available. So now let's start with the today's session. The focus is understand the fundamentals behind big data. Understand the technology fundamentals. Okay, so this is our focus today. So this is what we want to do. So let's start with it. So let's start with a traditional database system. So any database system has two parts. So first part is it enables storage of data. Okay, so this is our first part. The second part is once the data is stored, it enables querying or processing of the data. So this is what a typical data store supports, an RDBMS or any data store. It allows to store the data in some form and enables processing. So now let's look at a typical application. A typical application will have a web front end. Okay. So this is the website, HTML or something. So let's say in today's world it will be HTML, JavaScript and so on. Okay. So this is the front end of the application. I am looking at the architecture of the application. Then you will have a service layer, which you have a application tier, app tier. Here is where all the application specific logics are written. Application logic is written. So the web front end interacts with the application layer. So in this case, if you are using servlets and JSPs and so on, it will be here. Then it interacts with the data store. So it interacts with the data store. So let's say this is your RDBMS engine. Okay, so for now, let's say it's an Oracle or a DB2 engine. So you connect to this database engine. Now the most important part to note is as the volume grows up, the database engine don't store data locally on that machine. It is usually stored in a more reliable structure, which is called as the storage attached networks. So it is a SAN or a NAS, network attached storage, or a SAN. So this is where you actually store the data. So physically it is in these drives, and there is a network connection between the DBMS engine and this particular engine. This gives two capabilities so that the DB engines can scale and so on. So the network, the whole data is pretty much stored here. So this is the typical application architecture. Any questions on this architecture? This is what is happening today. So what we miss out usually is this last part. This last part is what we miss. We assume that database is storing all the data locally. Most of the time it is not. As volume increases, we store the data in SAN or NAS. And this is usually stored at a different machine. If this is very high bandwidth, but it is stored separately. So now, let's say we are talking about a petabyte or a terabyte of data. So let's say 1 petabyte of data. Now if you have to have a 1 petabyte, obviously it will not be stored in the engine, it will be stored in the SAN and NAS. So it will be stored here. Which essentially means if you are trying to query, process or anything, there will be a request going to the DBMS engine. DBMS engine is going to bring the data because the processing has to happen here in the DBMS engine. So all the data is going to get pulled from here to the DBMS engine. So there is a first bottleneck here which is getting created. Okay. So the first bottleneck is here with network traffic or network bandwidth, let me call it. So this is your first problem, or network congestion. That's a better way to look at. Okay. Thanks, Krishna. So this is what is happening. First bottleneck here. The second bottleneck is the read of the data. So let's say you have worked in many applications. Whenever there is a performance issues, finally where did it nail down to? The performance issues are either nailed down to network bottleneck, okay, or IO bottleneck. Okay, so this is the two places where usually the bottleneck lies. CPU bottleneck or memory bottlenecks is usually very less. This is only incorrect coding basically. So if you are not a good developer, obviously, you have a memory and CPU problem. But otherwise, infrastructure wise, you always get into network and IO bottlenecks. Now, one of the network bottleneck which we already saw. IO bottleneck is another most important time consuming thing. Why is the IO bottleneck? Because we are reading from this drive, the SAN or the NAS drive, and that read is causing us problems because there are a lot of drives here and everybody is accessing to read the data. There is only one set of access mechanism there, that it is physically rotating spindles which has to be scanned through, assuming it's not a SSDs or something. In SSDs the IO bottleneck is still better, it is compressed and it is much useful. But if it is not SSDs, solid state devices, okay. So when I refer SSDs, it's solid state devices. This is the new trend in storing data, where there is no mechanical parts. In all other drives there is mechanical parts, where the spindle rotates, tries to search the data and get it, and gradually we are moving it. It's only that SSDs are costlier. So they are called the flash drives also, so you can look at those as the large scale data stores going forward. So the problem is, there is this 1 petabyte of data has to be read, and usually the bottleneck is there in IO. Why the bottleneck? Because there is some bunch of spindles which are reading it, and it gets exhausted because you can so much only spindles you can have, and also everybody is accessing the same data every time it is coming there and searching. So that is another reason why there is a bottleneck there. So you have an I/O bottleneck, you have a network bottleneck in a typical application. Apart from that, you can see that between RDBMS and application logic also there is a network traffic which is going through, and hence there is a potential bottleneck here as well. So the lessons learned from all this is, if you move the processing closer to the data, these bottlenecks can be avoided. And it's common sense. I don't think anybody has to tell us that if you move processing near to the data, bottlenecks can be eliminated. Network bottleneck at least will go off. Okay, so network bottleneck can be eliminated. So this is where the first fundamental starts off. Okay, fundamental number one is, how do I eliminate network bottleneck? To eliminate network bottleneck, I need to push the processing as much as closer to the data. Okay, so this is fundamental number one. Let's look at the fundamental number two. Now, assume that you have pushed the data towards each record. Now, RDBMS has a one fundamental limitation, that it stores data in the form of records. So each record is stored. A typical record size will be, let's say, 100 KB or maybe 10 KB, 100 KB is usually the record size. So which means the access of the records from this disk is basically at 100 KB at a time. So there are million records. So million into 100 KB is accessed at one point of time. Okay. So this is how the access mechanism is happening by the RDBMS itself. Now, when we are talking about big data or large data, we don't process usually 10 records or 100 records. We process most of the time full data, which means I have to get all the 100 million records or 100,000 million record, whatever it is. I have to get all of those data to process it. So I am reading record by record, record by record, record by record. It's going to take a long time. So the best way is there a possibility I can read records in bulk? Now, why would records in bulk save time? So for that you need to understand what is known as what goes when you try to read a record. When you try to read a record, you have to imagine what is happening at the disk level. The first thing which happens is the disk, the spindle rotates to seek the position where the data is or the record is. So seek the position. So that is the first activity which happens. Once the position is known, it will say read 100 bytes, read 200 bytes, read 100k bytes and so on. So read is happening after that. So now for every record, if you do the seek, then read, seek, read, seek, read, it's going to take long time. So usually seek is, let's say, 100 times lesser than the read time usually, because seek is faster, not that fast, but yeah, it's a activity which needs to be done. So what we are saying is, we can eliminate this seek for every record. Okay, so we can eliminate this seek for every record if we store the data in bulk, or if we read the data in bulk. No need to store the data. If you read the data in bulk, that is good enough. So that is what Hadoop will try to do, or the processing will do. We'll read the record in bulk to eliminate the seek time which is available for seeking every record at a time. So this is one more solution. So the second solution which we discuss now is store and read records in bulk. Store and read records in bulk, so that seek time can be reduced or eliminated. So it will be only one seek type for every block of data. And this is precisely the reason why you would see that when we look at Hadoop, what is Hadoop? Hadoop will store data in blocks so that it can read records in bulk. Okay, so this is another fundamental. Now let's look at the third fundamental. Here the problem, see, as thousands of users come in, millions of users come in, the stress is that application layer you will start scaling, you will put more machines. But the DBMBs you are not able to scale. So you are not able to scale the DBMB because you need to have ACID properties onto it. You need to have ACID. ACID stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation and durability. To bring this kind of characteristics, you need to make sure that there is a single place where all the locks are maintained and all the transactions are done and the integrity of the data is preserved, the replication is controlled through one place. So all that is done, so that I'm not going to get into the ACID property right now. But yeah, so to ensure that there is ACID, the scalability of this layer is limited, which essentially means as volume increases, your data processing capability, okay, becomes a problem. Even data storage becomes a problem as the volume increases. So what you want to do is, you want to split this data stored and processing much faster. So the third fundamental is, we are saying is, you need to distribute the processing and storage for scalability. Okay, now you can do and distribute the storage. This is also a SAN and NAS is also somewhat of a distributed storage. But the problem is, it is not enforcing data local processing. Okay, and second thing is, it is a shared disk architecture where the disk is shared between all the processors. So all the processing logic you can scale, but still the disk is common. So shared disk architecture has a problem. So shared disk, avoid shared disk and go to shared nothing architecture. In a shared nothing architecture, what happens is, let's say you have a machine has a CPU, okay, machine has memory, machine has a disk. So what we are saying is, in a shared nothing architecture, all these are dedicated to one machine. So let's say there is 100 GB of data here in this disk. Only this processor is going to process that 100 GB of data, and it is going to use this memory. Now another machine is there that will also have 100 GB of data. That processor will do data local processing. So there is no sharing of data between this 100 GB and the other 100 GB. Each one will act independently. So this is your fourth fundamentals in big data. I will stop here and take some questions from a fundamental perspective, and then there are 2 more or 3 more fundamentals which we need to cover before we can go for an end-to-end example. Any questions till here? No questions? You can unmute and speak the questions if there is. Again, what I try to do is explain the fundamentals behind an application architecture. I am trying to find where are the bottlenecks for large scale data processing. Okay, identified that network congestion is one part. We have identified that data local processing could help in another way. Shared nothing architecture could help in another way. When the data grows, it is better to have more processors, more disk to process the data. That will help you scale. So these are the fundamentals which is there. We should also look at storing and reading data in bulk if your requirement is for bulk data load and read, which is typically the case in big data. So that is the reason all these 4 fundamentals are being used. Any questions? Let me, since it's a very silent group, I will ask couple of ways to understand. So Ram, is it? Yeah, go ahead.
One question, right? In shared network architecture, shared nothing architecture as well, the processing should be shared, right? Then how do I know where my records are getting stored?
Okay, so let me take that 1 second. Let me save this picture. Let me save it in a proper place so that I can share this with you. Okay, so the question is, if there is absolutely no sharing, we'll come to that picture again later. Should it there not be any sharing at all? Because let's say these are the 3 machines which we have. Each machine is having its own data. Let's say 100 GB here and so on. Another 100 GB here. Right? Another 100 GB here. And it is, each one is doing their own processing. So the question is, individually processing is all great. Okay. So we are going to process the data here. We are going to process the data here. So I'll say P1, P2, P3, process will run. But usually the business case is such that the data is not looked at in isolation. Data is also to be combined. Right? So 100 GB ka processing P2 is doing, P3 is doing, let's say, sorry, this is P3. So when it is doing, if in a shared nothing architecture, there is no talking of the data between these 3. So this processor only has visibility to this. So let's say we have an employee file which is like 300 GB. So this is an employee file which had 300 GB of file. 300 GB employee file. So this is our problem statement. And we stored this 300 GB in these 3 machines, 100, 100, 100. Because we want to do shared nothing architecture, we put all the processor and memory at each of the place. Now in this word, I want to select sum of salary. I'm writing a query on that because I usually prefer to write logic in the form of query. So select summary from employee, sum of salary from employee table. This is what you want, which essentially means you need to read this 100, add up all the salary, and 100, add up all the salary, 100, add up all the salary. But the result has to be between adding all of these as well. So that means shared nothing architecture will also need some amount of distributed coordination to make it work. Correct? So that is the thing which we are coming to. So there should be a distributed coordination between the machines, the shared nothing machine. See, this is the questions, correct? Partha? I just want to make sure that I understand the question so that I can answer it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is clear. Now, the biggest problem which we saw is reading the data is our problem. Reading the data, because there is seek time for every record. Correct? So if you do data local processing and seek these records, that part we have eliminated the bottleneck. Okay. Our bottleneck was with network, because we are transferring bulk of the data. Now in this case, if you see it, select sum of the salary. So employee may have 1000 fields. We are only interested in one field. We can do a local reduction of adding up all the salary. So only one attribute will come out from this machine. Correct? So this is the salary, sum of the salary from this machine. Sum of salary from this machine. Similarly, sum of salary will come from this machine. And that will be a very small byte. Correct? Or maybe for that matter, forget byte. It can be 100 KB also, or maybe 100 MB also. It is much better than transferring this 100 GB, 100 GB, 100 GB to the database engine and processing it there. So the principle behind big data processing is you do this local processing, local calculation, reduce the data to a very smaller means, and then use the network traffic to transfer this to some other machine, process it there. So we have already reduced the big data problem into a small data problem, because the whole bulk of the data is getting locally processed and only part of the data is getting distributedly processed. So this is the fundamental. So fundamental 4 is, which we are saying is, reduce or do as much as possible data local processing. And this is where we start getting into Hadoop as well. So if we do this, our bottlenecks will go away. So there is nothing like each one can be independently processed and all. There is nothing like that. But what we are saying is, if we can make it majority of the things locally processed, you can still eliminate and get a much better performance. But does that answer your question?
Yes, Suresh.
Yeah, so this is the another fundamental. So data local processing. Okay. So
just to extend the same question, so if we are saying that if we add any conditions, say that the employee is a kind of manager or something, and extend that query there, we are saying that get the sum of salary from employee table, and if I say if I have to get only manager salary, then how will the three P1, P2, P3 would know where exactly this, I mean, do we really store it in a random way and all the spindles rotate and find out in all P1, P2, P3 person? Or will it check in all the virtual disks?
Yes. Yeah. So let's extend this question further and see. Okay. So let's remove this question. Let's put the other question in place. So it is select sum of salary from employee where employee age greater than 25 and employee gender is equal to male. Okay. So let's say this is the question. Now the question is, how does this whole thing works? Does it still needs to scan this 100 GB, or can it have some amount of index or something which the RDBMS does, okay, and get through it. Okay. So first, make it very clear, I am not talking about Hadoop. Okay. I want to be very clear, I am not talking about Hadoop. Okay. Because in Hadoop there will be no index to begin with. So it is going to scan for all of those. But if it is not Hadoop, yeah, you can create your own index. Okay, which is HBase or whatever it is, you can create your own index. So this can be searched without reading the whole 100 GB. But what Hadoop will do is, so now let's look at what Hadoop or any distributed processing which is not having an indexing solution. Okay, what it will do? It will say that I need to anyway apply this predicate, okay, across all the data. So why don't I push down this predicate down to each machine locally? So as I am reading this 100 GB, I will keep on applying this filter. and only that rest of the data is going to go for processing. So I can push this processing down to each node. So each node is going to apply the filter. The reason we can do that filtering is because the filtering is at the record level. Correct? So if the filtering was at the record level, I could easily push in this filtering right at the node level. Correct? But for some reason, I want to do group by, let's say, city. And I want to get sum of salary and city group by city. So what happens? I cannot do any of this grouping and calculation at the local level. So what I will do is, I can still apply this predicate at the each of the machine level. So this filtering will still happen at the machine level. So it will bring up only records where employee age is 25 and gender is male. It will bring those data out. Then it will try to get the field salary and city and pass it to the coordinator. Okay. And then this coordinator is going to, for every city, it is going to calculate the sum of the salary. So this is how it will work. It will try to do as much as possible of data local processing. Remember, this is the most important. It is not to say everything is data local processing. It will try as much as possible to push it to data local processing. And when you look at Hadoop also, you will see that it will try to the maximum. Okay. After that, if it's still not possible, it will try to do a distributed call. Okay. So the idea is to make it the performance as much as possible. So did that answer your question? Who was that actually?
Yeah, this is Soma. I'm sorry, I didn't answer earlier.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that answers. Yeah, that answered my question.
Okay, so Ankit had another perspective. So the question which he wants to bring in is, from a data local processing, I am only maintaining the consistency of data in one machine and I don't need lock across the machine. That's not always true. Okay. Because there is nothing concept of a lock as such here. Because if you are reading this record and these records, don't assume that locking is only, there is no need of a distributed lock and all. It is not the case, because you will need in situations where you need a distributed lock. Okay. So you might need a distributed lock because of replications and so on. Distributed locking will still be a problem at point of time. So let's not talk about locks right now. Okay. Locking is not a clear way to look at from this perspective, that bringing a shared nothing architecture avoids locking. That's the incorrect statement to look for. Because if you look at the art of scalability, what we have done is we have broken down and started using multiple machines to solve our large data problem. Correct? We have done distributed processing. That is what we have tried to do now. Distributed processing, which means we introduced multiple machines. So what happens is, with every machine introduced, we also brought in a mean time before failure, MTTF, correct? So every machine has a lifeline. So the number of machines which now every disk we have brought in, and every disk has a access time, every disk has a lifetime, and this can fail. So when it fails, you will lose the data. So you need replication, backup and so on. And when you get into that problem, your distributed locking is not going to hold true. Okay. So don't worry about this distributed locking or this mean time before failure right now. We will come back to that at a later point of time when we start ruling replication. So let's not worry about this concept right now here. So only worry about a distributed shared nothing architecture enables you to do as much as data local processing as possible, and pushing it down as much as possible. Okay, so Partha had a question that variety is also a big data problem. Okay, so let's go to variety problem that is coming up next. Okay, so let me say this is the shared nothing architecture concept. So let's go and look at the third part of it. Okay, so very interesting third part, and Partha has brought up at the right time. There is unstructured data, semi-structured data. What is unstructured data? A data where schema is not well defined. Okay. Schema in a unstructured data, there is no schema, in fact, no defined schema. In a semi-structure, there is not too much well defined and it grows and so on. And then structured is well defined. We covered that in the last video. So please refer to the video if you have not referred to that. Okay. So coming to how do we handle, or where do variety also brings out any problem with the data? So what is the problem with variety? Let's take an example. I am a company. I have, let's take a hypothetical situation for now, which will make it easier to understand, and then you can extrapolate to anything. I have employee pay slips. Okay. For some reason, assume that I am a fool and I didn't store the structure of the pays in a database. I only printed into a PDF the data of employees and created all the PDFs and kept it. I don't have any database. My database is only this employee PDF files, payslip PDF files. Okay, so it's a payslip PDF files. This is all what I have. And I'm going to do the same salary processing which I want to do, which we discussed just now. So these PDF files are going to be bigger. So I will, let's say I will have 100 TB of PDF files every month. Okay. And I want to find sum of salary of all the employees whose age is greater than 25. I'm having PDF. People will say you should structure it, you should store it. But this is the fact. I don't have it. And this is exactly the problem when you look at unstructured data. So when you look at unstructured data, let's say you have the call center logs, the emails, let's say. So emails sent by customer. Okay. So this, I want to analyze it. There is absolutely nothing. I have a PDF file. Now why I didn't take this example is, there is one step from here to identifying what you want to analyze. That step I want to skip it for now, because that comes into the area of text analytics. So what to analyze? Here I am very clear that the payslip will have fields like basic salary, it will have PF and so on, correct? Or it will have tax. These are the fields which will be there, and you will know precisely how to parse it and get it and so on. Okay. But the problem is parsing and getting it all that. So this PDF now is stored in our 3 machines. Okay. Now what are the choices which we have? There are 2 choices. One is, when I store this file, okay, I can parse this whole file, I can extract all the fields in this, create a very good structure and store it into these places. Correct? So that is my first option. First option is structure the unstructured data and store it in a database kind of a concept. It need not be database, but it can be in a data store, I would say. So that when I refer a data store, it is RDBMS plus NoSQL. Okay, and we'll see what a NoSQL later point sometime. But don't worry, it's similar to an RDBMS, but without the relational schema. So I took the employee PDF files which are of 100 terabytes, and I want to do the sum of salary, this processing. I want to do select sum of salary from employee where age greater than 25 and gender equal to male, and maybe city also. But for now, let's say this is what I want to run on this bunch of PDFs. So what are my options? The natural choice is, as you are storing this whole information, try to get salary, age, gender and put it. Okay, so I will structure it. The other option is, I will say, okay, I want to do a group by city also. Then immediately you will say, okay, parse the file again, get the city also, store it in structure. Then one smart guy is going to come and say, hey, don't do like that. All the fields in the PDF file, please parse it. Okay, and store it in the data store. This is our natural choice, so that you can start writing any queries and so on. But you did this. Okay, you did this also. After 3 years, you started going and analyzing all the queries which is written. Okay, all the queries which we wrote in this data. We found that only 5% of the fields are used, which essentially means we wasted 95% of the field parsing upfront. And we stored it, structured it. We wasted the storage space. We've also wasted the processing at that time. So every PDF processing is going to take a lot of time. So we wasted a lot of it, while we needed only 5% of the field. Okay. Secondly, tomorrow, if there is a new PDF which has come through and so on, you have to always keep updating your parsing logic, even though you don't know whether that field is even going to be there or not. Because let's say for some reason a new taxation came into play and says it added some like professional tax. This is around very small amount. We never wanted to analyze it, but since it has come, now you start changing the whole process, you added it and all. So this becomes a mess. The process of structuring the data upfront, process of structuring an unstructured data upfront leads to chasing your own tail, kind of. Okay, so leads to total wastage and loss, because you might not need all the fields. So what big data says is, we will do what is known as just-in-time parsing, or more properly known as schema on read, compared to schema on write. So RDBMS is actually schema on write. Because if you have to store any data, let's say this PDF file, you have to store it into an RDBMS. First you will say, okay, let me create a relational schema, let me parse it and put it together. In big data we say, the data is going to be so huge and it will be so vast and so variety and so on, that if you start chasing your whole development process to structure it and store it, do the data modeling in 6 months, decide it by the time it changes, new data has come and so on, this problem becomes exponential and you will not get any business value at all. So the way is, store the data as is, and when you want to run this query, let us apply a dynamic schema at that time. That is, we will apply a schema on read rather than applying schema on the write. So this is the concept and how you handle variety part of the problem. To solve the variety part of the problem, you use this technique, schema on read instead of schema on write. Obviously, there is an overhead of, let's say you write this query 10 times. So every time it is getting processed and parsed. So that is where the intelligence will come in, saying that if I have to do this every time, it might be better off structuring the data. So it usually in a life cycle of big data, this is how it starts with. You first take the data, put it into the Hadoop or whatever it is. Don't worry about structuring it. When you want to read it, you will directly apply the schema and read it. Now if you think that that is going to be repetitive, you know precisely which fields you are interested in. Apply the processing on that, store it separately and use it for recurring use purpose. But majority of the queries in big data are not recurring. Majority of the data explorations are one time or ad hoc or on demand. In that case, schema on read is a much better choice. So remember in your project, before you structure the data, rethink, is it worth to structure the data upfront right now? Or should I structure the data when I really need it? If you are needing that particular piece of information every day, every hour, structure it. Otherwise, dump the data. So Hadoop or the big data repository contains all the raw data as is. Okay. So schema on read is basically, Ankit also wanted to summarize that, saying schema on read is applying a dynamic schema to the data at runtime when you are reading the data. When you are reading the data, you apply the schema and read. So that is schema on read. And this is another principle which helps you handle the big data problem. Is that clear? I hope. Partha, the variety problem is handled to some level. I know it's not handled to the full place. Okay. Because you still need to look at the videos, I think, once. What is the unstructured variety problem? And then once you see this, this is one solution for handling unstructured content. Okay. Solution for handling unstructured content. One is schema on read. There are many more. As we go through it, we will see it. Okay. So let me go back to the fundamentals. Schema on read versus schema on write. So I hope this is clear. Data local processing. Move the processing as close to the data. Avoid network traffic. Clear? By moving local storage. Do block storage to avoid local seek time. Okay, so this we didn't cover and this we didn't cover. So there are two things which we have not covered. So let's take few of these things. So disk read through parallel. Okay. So let me do this. What is this? This is schema on read or variety problem. Schema on read. Okay. So now let's look at the distributed. Okay, just hold on 1 second. I'm waiting here. Sorry. So I think we'll continue for another 5 minutes. We should finish it off. I hope you can hear me now. Okay. So what I'm saying is, we said we are going to have multiple drives, multiple machines, each having its own disk. So let's say this is its disk, this is its disk, this is its disk. Now every disk has its own limitation of how many bytes per second it can render. bytes per second a disk can read the data, or disk can read and write. This is based on the spindle, number of spindles, the head and so on the disk. So let's say there is 10 of this. So there is a 10, let's say we say 100 megabytes per second it can read. So 100 Mbps is what the read rate is from this disk. So you have 100 Mbps from this disk also. Okay, and so on. So you have 100 Mbps from this disk, you have 100 Mbps from this disk, okay, and another 100 Mbps from this disk. So what essentially means is, the more disk you have, the more throughput you are getting. Is that clear? So with distributed processing of large scale data sets, what we are also doing is, we are also getting increased throughput. Otherwise what would have happened is, we had one SAN. So let's go back to our first principle, first picture. So this was our first picture. So we had one SAN, correct? We had a single SAN and there were spindles here. So let's say there were throughputs which were coming because of these spindles from here. Now if you have many of these, the throughput increases exponentially. So that is what we are trying to do here. So when we are saying that, when we are doing distributed data local processing, we get higher throughput. Okay, so this is all the performance things which we are getting out. We use schema on read, data local processing, avoid network storage, block storage, disk throughput. And the last important one is, usually in a big data stuff, we usually try to store the data once. So you are trying to do a weblog processing. Okay, so if you are trying to do a weblog processing, you collect all the weblogs and see it. In this case, our salary also, PDF files you have collected and kept it, and you never update it. So usually in a big data thing, it is write once and read many times. The characteristics of the data is like that. It is not meant for a transaction system like in our RDBMS, where in an RDBMS you write, read, write, read, write, read, you can do it continuously. But in a big data system or a big data application, usually the demand is different. You bring the data, you store it the data once, and then you read it many times. So it is the characteristics of what is known as write once, read many times, which is worm. So most of our discussion going forward is going to be a worm based discussion, which means our data is never going to get updated. It is going to be only append only. So we will cover these two things a little bit more next time when we start with Hadoop. Okay. So today what we did is, we focused on the fundamentals of big data. Schema on read, data local processing, network storage, portal, disk throughput, and worm. And there was one question which was mentioned, which I wanted to cover at the end, which is the real application of Hadoop. Okay. So I think last time we introduced big data, but we didn't understand the usage of big data. What is the real application? So let's look at real applications for big data so that you get the examples. The first and foremost is fraud detection. So let's say you get lot of credit card transactions and so on, and you want to identify frauds in these transactions. So what you are going to do, you are not only trying to collect the transactions, you are going to collect the user profiles. You are going to collect the merchant profile, because the merchant who is sending the credit card, let's say. I'm just taking one example. Okay. So merchant profile and so many other data. Now, this is all structured data. There is no unstructured data. Okay. You can find, you already knows the fraud examples. Correct? You already know a few fraud examples. So what you do is you process this data and tries to derive patterns which are similar to the fraud example. And for this you will use machine learning and so on. But where does big data come into? This processing is going to take lot of time. And this is where big data is going to come and help you. So this is one example where you have a large processing need, okay, large processing need for structured data, and you can use big data processing. Okay. Now the other use case is usually around cost efficiency. One is where you have a Netezza system or a Teradata system. Your data is growing from 100 dB to TBs to petabytes. So 100 petabyte it will never reach also in Netezza. It will cause problems there already. So let's say it goes to 100 TB ranges. What happens is, what they say is, if you increase this volume, you need to buy big boxes of Netezza to process it. Okay. Now each box comes with a CPU license. So as the data increases, your license cost becomes unbearable. So we use Hadoop and other distributed processing because they are open source and cheap, and they run on not so great hardware. So I would say is commoditized hardware, which is cheaper. So it is not solving anything radically different. All the same processing which you did in Netezza, it is going to do it in Hadoop. No different process. Okay. So it is just trying to bring. So see, Netezza, it's Ankit, your thing is not right, because it is not vertical scaling versus horizontal scaling. Okay. Because Netezza is also going to do horizontally scaling. There is no problem with horizontal scaling on Netezza. Okay. It is also a distributed MPP kind of an architecture. So the problem here is the cost, nothing else. So the cost is going to be one driver. So this is another use case. Now let's take another important example, which is recommendation engines. So this is where things get tricky. Okay? So you have a call center here. Okay, so this is the call center guy taking calls, and he is on the call with the customer. Now he needs to make a recommendation to the customer on some basis. So he needs to give some recommendation. Now how does he make the recommendation? It is based on the previous historical data and based on users who are similar to this customer who is calling. So there is a huge back-end process which needs to run and calculate the recommendation. So for this also you will use big data recommendation engine. Okay. Again, I am doing it at a very higher level. Once you understand all the technologies in big data, we will show you one of these examples how to do it from a block diagram perspective. In the architecture sessions, we are going to cover that. Now let's look at another example, which is a weblog analysis. So let's say you have a website. You get lot of log files from there. So you can understand the customer behavioral patterns using the website. So this is another use case. Customer behavior patterns. So which links he's clicking more, which links he's spending more time. Based on that, you can actually derive what the customer is actually interested in. And you can model the customer and give him again recommendations based on his behavior. So this is where the customer is calling the call center. There is another application where customer is calling, his speech is analyzed. Okay. The speech, from the speech the intent is decided, and based on the intent and the predefined recommendation, you give a contextualized recommendation. So these are different examples of big data. Again, some of this might not make sense to you guys right now. Okay. But don't worry, we will take some more. So I've taken some complex example. Let me simplify some examples next time and take some of the very simple examples which you can do. This is one definite big simple example where you are doing nothing but moving the CPU cycles from Netezza to Hadoop. This is an example where again you are using Hadoop for large scale data processing. This is where you are using Hadoop for next generation analytics. Okay. And so on. So there is a different category. I will cover those in the next sessions. So we will be stopping it here for today. So if there is any questions, let me know.